Common beginner's mistakes on the Camino. Hi everybody, I'm Peter and I'm an expat Kiwi. Welcome. What are the most common beginner's mistakes on the Camino? Well, there's quite a few actually. Some of them start even before you hit the Camino. And the most common is expectations. Some people set very high expectations for what the Camino is going to bring them, or for what they anticipate doing on Camino. The former is probably the more problematic, because if you start off with the expectation that the Camino is going to change your life, well, you're setting yourself up for failure. You don't know what the Camino is going to do. You may find that the Camino at the end is just a really good walk. Or you may find that it's been absolutely transformative. But setting off with the expectation that it's going to be doing so is setting yourself up to fail. Overplanning. Pretty obvious really, isn't it? You can spend hundreds of hours planning out every little detail of your Camino, and the moment you actually hit the trail, it all goes out the window. By all means do some planning, just don't feel the need to plan every single little detail. That said, some kind of plan is a good idea, because zero planning also doesn't work. At the very least, you have to have some idea when you're going to get to Santiago or wherever you plan to finish your Camino, because you need to be able to organise trains or flights or whatever home again. Overplanning leads directly on to booking everything in advance. If you're on a very short Camino or on an extremely tight time frame, by all means, book everything, go for it. Most people, however, who book everything in advance end up finding that they have to make changes along the way because things happen. You meet somebody, you get injured, there's a major storm that stops you for a day. A whole bunch of different factors can affect you. So if you can avoid it, don't book everything in advance. Not testing your gear before leaving. It's pretty important, this one, especially the most important trifecta: shoe, sock and backpack. Shoes and socks, really, it's your shoe-sock combination that go together. So I suppose technically that's one. You need to make sure that those are working for you for several days before actually going out and hitting the Camino, because otherwise you have greatly increased your chances of getting blisters or some other injury for that matter. And the backpack has to be comfortable. If you haven't got it set up properly before you leave, you're actually setting yourself up at the very least to be far tireder than you need to be, and potentially for injury as well, because a backpack that is just badly fitted or simply too short, too long, can cause very big issues for you, especially on a longer walk. On that side of things, another mistake people make is buying all the top range gear. It actually doesn't have to be the best range gear, it has to be the most comfortable. And there's nothing wrong with you taking things from your wardrobe or borrowing items from your friends. I've talked about that elsewhere as well. Theft. Too many people leave valuables sitting on the table at their cafe or on their bed in the albergue while they go to the shower. I mean, seriously, you just don't leave valuables unattended. It doesn't matter where you are, and even if you've got people with you that you think that you know, if they're just new friends, sorry, don't trust them with your valuables unless you absolutely have to. I'd hate you to be disappointed, and it does happen. Talking of cafes and so forth, when you actually leave your rest stop, regardless of whether it's a cafe or a log on the side of the Camino, walk a couple of steps, stop, turn around and look back. Have you left something hanging off the side of your chair? Have you left something underneath your chair or beside that log or whatever it may be? The most common one is poles. I know, I've been there and I've done it. I walked 1.5 kilometers before I realized I didn't have my poles. So guess who had to walk all the way back again? As I've already said, the best way to avoid that is very, very simple. Take a couple of paces away, stop, turn around, look back. and double check. If you get in that habit every time, then you'll have no issues. One bonus tip there, if you're drying some clothing on the back of your backpack, regardless of whether it's a t-shirt or some socks, double safety pin them. Don't use pegs. Pegs come undone far too readily. If you double safety pin them, they're far more likely to be there at your next stop. Next up on the list, starting too fast. Don't roar out of the gate. You're much more likely to injure yourself, to give yourself blisters or shin splints or whatever the case may be. Start those first couple of days just that little bit slower than you believe yourself capable of. You can always make up time further on your Camino, but it's really hard to recover once you've actually injured yourself. Starting too fast leads into the other common mistake, which is trying to keep up with other people. Look, I know that new guy that you've just met from Romania is a great bloke and you really want to hang out with him longer. But in all seriousness, just don't. Don't try and keep up with people when they're walking at a pace that is faster than you would normally do. You are opening yourself up for injury, regardless of whether that's blisters or shin splints or some other ailment that may come about. You need to walk at your own pace. It is really critical. Walk at your own pace. By all means, arrange to meet at the next cafe or the next albergue or whatever, but just walk your own Camino. Talking of walking your own Camino, something that people don't often think about is giving themselves permission to quit. Because I love the Camino, but not everybody does. A handful of people that I've met out there, I never ever saw them again. Why? Because they basically started off thinking that this was absolutely what they wanted to do. They planned for it and so on. And when they got on the trail, they hated it. I don't know why. I'm not on their heads. I'm not in their hearts. But it just wasn't for them. If it's not for you, please give yourself permission to quit. Don't make yourself and everybody else around you miserable. And incidentally, I suppose that ties into health as well. Should you have the misfortune to be injured or get seriously ill while you're on Camino, stop. If you've got time, take a break for a few days, get better and move on. If you don't have the time, just quit. The Camino will still be there next year. And there's nothing wrong with a good holiday in Spain. Overpacking. Yes, the dreaded packing the kitchen sink syndrome. Overpacking is a very common mistake. It is very easy to get caught in the trap of packing those one or two extra little items just in case. If you don't need it, don't pack it. And by needing it, I do mean making sure that you've got the basics covered. There are plenty of packing list videos. I've got two separate ones for very good reason. The shoulder seasons and summer are two very, very different Caminos in my view. Yes, you could just take the risk of taking minimal gear with the intent of buying something in the next town, but remember on Camino, sometimes those next towns are 2 or even 3 days apart. You're only stopping in little villages in between, and the chance of being able to buy a raincoat, for example, or a decent warm layer are pretty slim. So ensuring that you've got the basics are pretty important. Underpacking is, of course, the flip side of that. And that is where people simply pack stupid light. I did a video on that. When it comes to that type of thing, please don't be that person who is absolutely reliant on everybody else the moment things are no longer perfect. Carry a very basic medical kit, even if it's just a few plasters and a couple of ibuprofen, just to get you through into the next town. It's very easy to say, oh, but we're stopping in a village every day. Yeah, but sometimes all that's there is an albergue. Why should those people in the albergue have to supply you with your needs when you should be carrying them? Ditto with a extra layer, with some kind of rain gear. It's not rocket science. You don't have to be prepared for everything, but you should be prepared to look after yourself. One final point for you, please do try and avoid the purist mentality. By purist mentality, I mean there are some people out there that adopt the attitude that the only appropriate way to walk a Camino is walking every step yourself, carrying your own bags, staying in only in albergues, and doing it for religious reasons. We all walk for different reasons. There is nothing wrong with having your bags forwarded, and there is nothing wrong with taking a lift or going forward, skipping a section because of injury, etc. Better to do that than miss out on everything altogether. Let's face it, folks, the pilgrims of old, when they had enough money, they rode, they had servants, they had people carry and cook and everything else for them. And even the poorest amongst them, if they were offered the opportunity to ride in a cart for a kilometre or two, would have grabbed it with gratitude. Gratitude is the attitude for the Camino. Sorry, that was a terrible pun, but it wasn't meant to be. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. Take care, and as always, buen Camino.